And so we've reached that time of year again when it's time to start thinking about the year to come, setting some New Year's resolutions, if you will, planning a course of action for the future. And so using this weather forecast brainstorming technique, I've put together a 20-minute trial Typhoon, a chance for you to test out the weather forecast way of working yourself by planning and forecasting the year to come. My name's Celia Gates and I'm the creator of the weather forecast way of working and thinking. I'm here to guide you now through this brainstorming exercise. You see, the weather forecast is actually a parallel thinking tool. Parallel thinking is really about looking at the same situation from the same perspective at the same time. This story here, the story of the 6 and the 9, illustrates what happens when you don't use parallel thinking. If you were to ask any of these two people what number is on the disc in front of them, well, one would answer a 6 and one would answer a 9, and they could disagree all day long, unless they actually took the time to step around and see the situation from each other's point of view. This is what parallel thinking is all about. It's about looking at the same situation from the same perspective, so as to be able to see the bigger picture. And the weather forecast is actually going to take you through 7 of these different points of view, so that you can start to examine a more holistic approach to your situation. It's amazing how the intuitive, easy answers simply surface when we take the time to build this balanced picture. So you're going to be drawing a mind map throughout this exercise. You'll need a plain piece of paper and something to write with. It's important that it's plain because this will actually help you to think laterally and literally at the same time. By all means, use a mind mapping application if you're used to using one. And if you're unfamiliar with mind maps, then don't let it worry you too much. They're a fantastic way of making sense of complex situations, of putting all the information down on one page. Just allow this process of intuitively documenting your thoughts to happen as you run through the exercise. The most important thing to think about is to be honest with yourself. It's only yourself that you're kidding, and really, the more honest you are, the more in-depth your thinking will become. So just relax and enjoy this process. Let's not waste time. Let's get started straight away. I'm going to ask you to start by summarising whatever it is that you choose to think about. In this instance, the year ahead, your forecast for the following year. Write whatever it is that you're thinking about, the subject of your brainstorm, in the centre of the page in front of you, and isolate this by means of drawing an oval or a cloud shape, whatever you prefer, around it. This is the centre of your mind map. The branches are going to stem out from here as we get into the exercise. Now, lots of detail is going to flood onto this page in a very short space of time, so be prepared to work quite quickly. Don't spend any length of time really worrying about any one thought. Just allow your thoughts to drift in and out of your head and record them as we run through. Now, the first mindset that we're going to be looking at is the lay of the land. As I said, this is one of the 7 points of view that we'll run through in this exercise. The lay of the land is really a chance for you to assess your current situation. So imagine yourself to be like a cartographer, a map maker, if you will, given the job of charting your situation. Start by asking yourself how you actually feel about the year ahead, the situation you currently find yourself in, and indeed this exercise. How do you feel right now when you start to think about the prospect of what you're brainstorming? Just add those thoughts, the words, short, succinct sentences that summarise your emotions. Add them to your mind map. These really set the foundations of the exercise, so just go ahead and write them down right now. Ask yourself why you're feeling this way as well. Why were you prompted to write those emotions down in the first place? Just branch further thoughts out from this. Think about what you know to be true of your current situation. How perhaps do you spend your time on an average day? What's the cost of what you're doing? How do you spend your money? Think about the constraints around your situation, what you know of it to be true. Document it as you see it today, aware, of course, that this might change in the future. Perhaps think about your strengths and weaknesses. Think about the physical constraints that exist within your situation, and perhaps any open opportunities you might be aware of already. Just build up your mind map as your thoughts occur to you about where you currently stand right now. What does the lay of the land look like to you? And we are moving quite quickly through this exercise. Don't worry too much about finishing off your answers. Just start to draw your writing to a stop and get ready to switch mindsets, because we're now going to look at this situation from the perspective of one of those beautiful sunny days. So I'm going to ask you to imagine a day when it effectively feels as if everything is going your way. Describe your perfect picture of the present. On a beautiful sunny day, what would you be doing? Who would you be spending time with? How would your plans pan out? The sun's rays really fuel us with all the energy and resources that we need. So what would you achieve if you had everything that you required available to you? What would you be doing if money was no object, for instance? Just keep adding the words to your mind map. The sun's light also allows us to see a long way into the distance. So consider what your future might look like if you could see it on the horizon. Start to build up that picture of a sunny day within your situation. Be positive, energetic, optimistic in your outlook. And just start to draw that way of thinking to a stop. Shake your shoulders a little bit if you need to. Get ready to switch mindsets, because we're now actually going to introduce some winds into this environment. Now, winds within the context of the weather forecast represent all of the external influences, anything that's effectively outside of your control, but nevertheless influential to your decision-making process. Start by considering the local winds. These might be your friends or family, perhaps your peers, colleagues, your classmates even. People that exist within your local community, whether that be on or offline. Start by naming some of these winds in the way they influence your current situation. Become aware of the people that are surrounding you. Ask yourself a little bit about whether they're warm, gentle breezes filling your sails, or indeed icy cold gusts that perhaps hold you back from time to time. Learn to read these winds and set your sails accordingly. Think also about the prevailing winds, perhaps the fashions and trends within the context of your situation, the technological and innovative developments that are occurring, perhaps even the economy, political legalities that surround your particular environment. Consider how these prevailing winds are currently blowing, in what direction, where from, and where are they going to? It can be absolutely exhausting battling into prevailing winds. Much better to use their collective energy. Again, name them by means of adding them to your mind map. Equally, become aware of any strong winds that might exist within the context of your situation. These could be passionate groups of people, activists even, perhaps promoters or celebrities that exist within your environment. Maybe even partners, lovers, passionate friends. Perhaps even your own passion and purpose can be isolated as a particularly strong wind that often influences you, sending you off course if you're not careful. Consider also where there might be some hurricanes and tornadoes likely to blow up. If you can identify these in advance, then you can batten down the hatches and prepare for the onslaught of the storm. It might even be that there's some weaker winds you'd like to harness more of. Consider these in the context of where they're blowing from and where they're blowing to, and how indeed you could set your sails to harness their energy. It's very important to acknowledge and actually understand the power of these winds, because they can dramatically accelerate your progress if you set your sails accordingly. Rather than battle against them, learn to harness this energy to your greater advantage. It's really through these connections that you'll gain the credibility you need to succeed. And having thought about the winds, just draw your writing to a stop. Get ready to switch mindsets, because this time we're actually going to look at the context of your situation from the point of view of a rainy, grey, miserable day. So start by thinking about a day where it effectively feels as if the world's working against you. Start to describe a picture that presents some of the problems. Think about what could go wrong effectively. The rain really shows us the leaks in the roof or the blocked drains. So use this metaphor by understanding where weaknesses might exist within your current systems. The rain encourages us to keep our eyes to the ground, and for this reason we notice more of the details. So be a little bit more detail specific in this instance, and spot potential problems, metaphorical leaks, blocked drains, areas of weakness within your organisation or activities. Use your experience, your sense of understanding, if you will, to really predict these potential problems. And having identified them, can you then take precautions to prevent them from actually materialising? We wear gumboots, don't we? We carry an umbrella. So just make a note of anything which might require further brainstorming or understanding in greater depth. Such negative speculation can be an extremely positive contribution to any exercise, especially if it means that you reinforce your systems before overloading them or expecting them to take on too much. Just keep adding the words to your mind map as they occur to you, thinking particularly about where potential problems might surface. Once you've spent enough time doing that, just draw your writing to a stop. As I say, we are working quickly and we're switching mindsets yet again, this time to examine the situation from the point of view of a rainbow. Now, there's something magical and mysterious about rainbows. This is certainly an opportunity for you to really stretch your imagination. So imagine yourself sitting down on a rainbow, overlooking your situation. Effectively, anything's possible in this frame of mind. What would you see if you could split the light on your situation? What might you change if you could click your fingers to make it happen? Think about this. Dig deep into your imagination. Sometimes there's a need to stimulate the imagination, so grant yourself 3 magic wishes if this helps, or give yourself superhero powers. What would these be, and how would you actually use them to your advantage? Really be less concerned with reality and allow yourself to dream freely. Rainbows mythically harbour pots of gold at the bottom of them. Metaphorically speaking, what would a pot of gold actually represent to you? How would this define your version of success? And more importantly, where would you find your pots of gold on your mind map? Start to identify these and draw little pots of gold on the map if it helps. Really understand what magical mysteries could possibly unfurl in this magical mystery multicoloured world that the rainbow mindset offers. And if there are any radical ideas to which you could potentially see value or merit, pots of gold hidden within them, then just make a note of things that might require a greater brainstorming session at a later date. And just stop thinking in that colourful, crazy way. Bring your writing to a stop. Get ready to switch mindsets. Because we're now going to imagine this situation as if it was suddenly covered with a thick blanket of fresh snow. Now, the snow effectively freezes the situation still. What it does do is it brings into question our basic survival. So ask yourself, what is essential to your survival within the context of this situation? What do you really need around you in order to survive? Look around the map to see what would stay visible above this white surface, or what would stand out to you if you were to remove the details. What's really important to you within the context of your situation? Perhaps think about some of the thoughts that have occurred to you regularly throughout this exercise. They might be more important than you're giving them credit for. What would you really need in order to survive in such a harsh environment? And of course, where would the paths that you would need to clear first exist? The snow shows us these patterns of movement, the footprints and imprints that appear on its surface. Where do you need immediate access to? And having learnt to survive, can you actually start to thrive? Where would you perhaps throw a metaphorical snowball? What would give you that sense of childish fun? It's important to be aware of this. This actually will carry us through the challenging times ahead. Where would you throw a metaphorical snowball? Or what gives you that sense of childish fun? Having learnt to survive, how are you going to thrive within your environment? And having thrown a few snowballs around, just draw your writing to the stop. Get ready to switch mindsets. We're actually entering the final part of this exercise, a chance for you to draw up your weather report. Now, it is the close of the process, but it's perhaps the most important part of it. It's a chance for you to really make sense of this mind map that you've drawn, and indeed some of the messages that you've delivered to yourself. Step into what people refer to as being that left-hand brain, think in quite a linear, logical manner, and remove yourself slightly from the information that you've created by adopting the role of the weather reporter. Really read from this map as if you were reporting on it, not necessarily influencing it, but able to succinctly summarise what's written on it for the benefit of your listening audience. Stay impartial. Remember, you're the observer in this situation. Your job's simply to report on what you see. Start by summarising your bigger vision, or indeed what your future might look like now that you've examined it in more detail. Find space on the map just to write a short sentence about this. And start to ask yourself what it is that you must do next in order to get to where you're really trying to go. What's your immediate priority? What action can you actually take to make the progress that you're striving for? Think about what questions you might have left to ask. And perhaps even start to consider some of the wins that you identified. Could you perhaps ask these people? Would they answer some of your questions? Just make lists now, if you will, things to do lists, questions to ask, people to ask them to. And of course, make a note of any thoughts that perhaps require further brainstorming. There might be fragments of ideas that have emerged here. It's a good thing to look at some of those rainy day thoughts and then compare them to the sunny day thoughts to bring in the elements of the rainbow and see how you can't cross-pollinate some of your thinking to perhaps reach a collaborative conclusion based on many of the different contrasting ideas that occurred to you throughout the brainstorm. Think about information that might still be lacking, skills and knowledge you yet need to acquire. Where could you get hold of this information? And finally, having become clear about what it is that you need to do next, add your name, your contact details if you like, the date, and in particular the copyright symbol to the bottom of the map. The date's important too, as it'll give you that point of reference for the future from which you can measure your progress. And just allow this map to be in your awareness over the next few days as your thoughts formalise and your actions begin to gather momentum. This is effectively your weather report. It's your map and your set of directions. It'll help you to navigate towards where you really want to go. And with a bit of luck and good fortune, it'll help you get there quicker too. So thank you very much for taking part in this brainstorming exercise, and congratulations on completing your brainstorming session. May it set you up to see the success that you deserve in the forthcoming year. Hopefully you feel clearer about your future, about the best course of immediate action to take. And by taking that action, you can build up the momentum that you need to really achieve the goals you set yourself. Above all, you've just learnt and put into practice the tremendous skill, the art and science, if you will, of weather forecasting. So thank you for taking part. By all means, share your mind map in the Bigger Plate community that we have as part of the weather forecast and the global brainstorm. If you'd like to connect to like-minded people using this technique, we have groups on Facebook and LinkedIn too. Above all, the more people that are using this, the more powerful a way of thinking and working it becomes. So by all means, invite your friends or share this tool with them. And thank you for helping us to further this collaborative mindset. There is, of course, the weather forecast book available on Amazon Kindle or on Lulu, should you want to know any more information about the weather forecast way of working and this powerful brainstorming process and decision-making tool. I'm Celia Gates. Have a very successful year ahead, and thank you very much for brainstorming.